In today's show, we try to understand what the function of a benefit is when it doesn't quite reach you. That's the case of thousands of particularly mine workers who may have qualified for a benefit, but it has never ever reached them. That's the central question in today's edition of Harambe.
From England to Poland, every step across the ocean, the ruling classes them is in a mess. Oh yes, the capitalist system a regrets, but the Soviet system now progress. So which one of them you think is best? When are the two of them the workers are contest?
Good day and welcome to Harambe, brought to you by Workers World Media Productions. I'm your host, Tashirik Trubadi. A very warm welcome to you. Today, we shift our attention to the historic challenge of South Africa's economy, which was built around mining, agriculture, and cheap black labor. Since the late 1980s, the mining industry has shrunk, and thousands of workers were laid off, many banished to the former homelands of the apartheid system, and in particular, some of our neighboring countries. Many have since struggled to survive and relied on the retirement and other benefits due to them. However, this was not quite forthcoming, leaving many miners and other workers and their widows destitute. In today's show, we assess the progress of these workers in accessing their long overdue benefits, and we talk to representatives of the Unpaid Benefits Campaign. Also joining us on the program, Dr. Dale McKinley, activist and senior researcher and educator at the Information Labour Research and Information Group, ILRIG. Thank you, gentlemen, to the both of you. A very warm welcome. Okay, and let's start this conversation now. Of course, let's start off with you, Dr. McKinley from ILRIG, that joins us from the Gauteng province. Thank you very much, of course, for joining us. Let's start off with having a look and assessing the South African economy at the time of the, I suppose, late 70s, right through the 80s, and even the 90s, that it was characterized by mineral extraction, that this economy has been built on that. And accordingly, cheap black labor was used to do the extracting. What certainly has been the scenario in trying to transform the sector, because it's so deeply entrenched, and given its practices, how far along would you say we are in transforming it?
Transforming the mining sector? Well, I don't think that there has been a great deal of transformation. The main transformation that has been done, obviously, is massive retrenchments and mechanization, abandonment of workers, more capital accumulation. But in terms of the working class itself and transforming it as something that would benefit our economy, it is not. In fact, it has gone the opposite direction. If you look at the contribution of the mining sector and the extractive sector, essentially is dropped in terms of our GDP. It's disoriented with that question because that's about a mining situation. So I'm not quite sure where we are.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it is about the Unpaid Benefits Campaign, but the foundation, of course, is that, and the backdrop of this is that a lot of the economies were built around agriculture and mining, of which those are the workers that, when laid off and when they lost their jobs, many of them did not quite receive those benefits. And so I'm looking just at the backdrop before getting to the benefits element, because of course we have about 30 to 40 minutes to cover in content. So I just wanted as a backdrop, look at what is the historic working sectors such as mining, agriculture, etc. So that really was the nexus of that question.
Okay, sorry. Yeah. Yes, I'll start again. Look, I was going to say that in terms of the mining sector, there has been very little transformation. In fact, workers, in relation to workers, it has gone backwards, not only in terms of the employment relationships, but also in terms of the exploitation of the extractive sector, its contribution to our economy, and abandoning workers, generally speaking, not only in respect of pensions, which we're going to discuss, but also in respect, for example, of diseases like asbestosis, and many of the occupational diseases that the workers suffered. This was the same characteristics as many other industries in agriculture as well as in manufacturing from the late 80s and 90s in particular, as privatization and corporatization kicked in, so too did the abandonment of workers, and many of the conditions became worse in terms of employment, as well as the general conditions of the contribution of that sector to our economy. So instead of moving forward after 1994 in most of these industries, relationship to workers, we moved backwards.
Okay, and given that particular backdrop, when some of these people lost their jobs, of course, William Kasiwe in studio with us, when a lot of the people lost their jobs, they were then, many of them went back to the homelands, many of them went back to their communities, etc., and never ever received any sort of communication about the benefits of that which is due to them. Why is that the case?
When people, they lost their jobs in mines, they go back to Eastern Cape the most, but also the whole of South Africa, even like Zimbabwe and the other places. When you come there, you come with empty hands. When you leave the work, you don't benefit anything. You just get your wages. Then you have to go back to Eastern Cape, and it was not easy.
Yeah.
The problem, we didn't go back there. The time for apartheid, because they was using the people from outside South Africa. Then that people, they pressed us. Like there was the foremen and the other stuff. We was just the laborers, the South Africans. I see that the government for that time was trying to oppress us. Then you see you can't go back. And I go to mine Stilfontein. It was 12th of January 1981. I was 18 years. Because of the struggle, the thing take me to mines. I was young, but we was working hard, not me alone. We was working hard. My first wages was 36 rand.
So why did you have to go back? Was this, the job was lost, the mine had shut down?
The company, the mine doesn't shut down, but you get a contract. When that contract is now finished, you have to go back home. But the others, they didn't go home, maybe go to another place in Joburg, you look for another job. But me, because the contract was finished, that 12 months I have to go back home. But because I was working hard, I can't go back there. Lot of people was dying underground. That thing makes us afraid because we was young, you see. Then I decide to come to Cape Town to come look for another job, you see, who's not underground.
Yeah.
You see.
Yeah. Okay, and I think that's a very interesting point to leave it at for now, because once we return from the break, I want to understand, the concept of mining executives and those that own the means of production who earn lavish profits, and of course they have a house, they build nice families, and they can show something for their wealth. The worker goes back with the wages and have very little to show for the work that they've done, and so there in that we see quite a significant imbalance, and that's the imbalance I want to get to once we do return from the break. To stay with us, this is Harambe. This is Harambe. You're with myself, Tashirik Trubade. We are talking about unpaid benefits, particularly in sectors such as mining and agriculture, traditional sectors that have built the South African economy, but workers having walked away with virtually nothing. Let's now have a look at what sort of benefits we are talking about here, Dr. Dale McKinley. In the South African worker paradigm, I suppose we often talk about either a disability benefit or a retirement benefit, and of course there are employment benefits once you are still in the employ of the company. These are workers, of course, that I suppose largely fall within the second category, and those would be retirement benefits. So, what's the extent really of the problem that we're talking about here?
Yeah, it's huge. It's Tashreeq. Basically, when we started the Unpaid Benefits Campaign, and there were many other workers who had been struggling for many years during the 90s and 2000s trying to get their benefits. When we started about 10 years ago, the number that we got was about 40 billion rands in unpaid benefits. Today, the number is over 90 billion. So it has doubled within the last 10 years. And that means the situation is getting worse. It's almost unimaginable that that kind of money is sitting there, and it's basically sitting with financial administrators. In other words, those companies like Old Mutual, Sanlam, Liberty, others, who took those pension funds of the mining sector, of the mining companies, of the manufacturing, of the farms, agricultural cooperatives, and others, and ran. And so the huge assets have been sitting there. They're attempting to try, obviously, to track down some of the workers. Many of them, as mentioned, are outside the country. But the bottom line, as we will discuss, is that they have fundamentally failed in their duties to do this. And as a result, millions and millions of workers and their families have suffered over the last 25 years as a result of not being able to access those benefits. So the situation is not only unacceptable in terms of the numbers that we're talking about, but just in terms of the pure dignity and the fact that, as you mentioned earlier on, these were industries that basically used workers, spit them out, and then abandoned them.
William, why have they not been able to access the benefits if it is there, and we're sitting with then that time already 40 billion rand in unpaid benefits? I suppose then it would be allocated to somebody, it belongs to somebody. So why do the beneficiaries or those who the benefits are due, why do they not have access to the benefits?
The problem, when this country changed, the whites give to the black peoples like ANC, then the ANC try to hide that money. Because if UBC was in there, Rosemary, the lawyer in Joburg, she was working for FSCB that time, not FSCA, because it changed now to FSCA. Then Rosemary see that money and ask them why they are keeping that money, because she see the money is for the peoples. Where's this people for this money? Then they chased Rosemary away. That's where Rosemary came to ex-mine workers, tell the ex-mine workers, your money is there by FSB. And FSB tried to run with that information. And Liberty, all the stakeholders, Old Mutual, they didn't want even to speak with the ex-mine workers, with their money. That time, ANC was there. ANC, Ramaphosa and Gwede Mantashe is one of the minerals. The minerals is under Gwede Mantashe, but they was the unions that time for the workers. But when they take over the South Africa, they take for themselves.
Yeah, which I mean is certainly a long-standing challenge I think that we have in this country. So who's withholding the funds here, Dr. Dale McKinley? Is it those administrators of the funds? Was it the companies that didn't facilitate the payment to the workers? And if it's due to them, to the workers at least, why isn't it being released?
Well, yeah. So here's the way it has worked. Basically, as you know, when companies set up pension funds, including many relieds and manufacturers and farms and others, those get administered by a particular, in the case of many mine workers, it was MIPFA. In many cases of the private sector, it was these private sector we've already mentioned, financial administrators. Now, their job, according to the regulations and created post 1994, was then obviously to pay out when you retire, when you're retrenched, when you're due your benefits, to pay those out. What they did was they basically sat on it. They didn't do their jobs. And here is where the Financial Sector Conduct Authority, previously the FSB, which the comrade mentioned, comes in. This is the regulator that is supposed to ensure that those financial administrators pay out and do their job. But because of the buddy-buddy relationship, and this, essentially, basically, you scratch my back, I'll scratch your back, which Rosemary Hunter was the director. The FSB and the FSCA failed in their regulatory duty. And basically what they did is, instead of ensuring that those were paid out, they essentially canceled hundreds of thousands of funds. And basically what that meant is that all this money essentially disappeared into the coffers of these financial administrators. And then the ones that have remained, they've just basically been treating them as something like, well, occasionally we'll pay out a few people if they contact us, but we're not going to proactively go out and seek. So there's a double failure. One is the greed of the capitalists and the capitalist sector and the financial authorities. And the other one is the failure of regulation, of implementing our laws, of the government enforcing its own regulations to make sure that the workers are paid out. So it's a classic case of where government and the private sector have colluded in order to basically ensure that workers do not get their fair due. And I think that's what leaves the hugely bitter taste in many workers' mouths, is that they feel that they have been sold out twice.
But who exactly does that benefit? Because if there was then a campaign with politicians' knowledge to not have these monies allocated to the workers who deserve those monies, I want to understand who benefits, because as you say, the administrators, that money simply disappeared in their coffers. So is there a pool that we know where there's a beneficiary whose details are attached to the benefit that is due to them? What sort of due diligence is there about where the money is and how the money can get to the recipient?
Yeah, so that's part of the problem, Patrick, is that, let's deal with the canceled funds. And that's what Rosemary Hunter uncovered, and then she was basically fired as a result of trying to basically blow the whistle on these cancellations of thousands of pension funds. What that did, those cancellations, essentially the argument was that there's no longer any workers alive. There's no one claiming these benefits. Therefore, they're sitting here. We might as well just take them back and make use of them. Basically, what that has done is that means that the financial administrators have stolen workers' monies. They then go and invest it somewhere else, and they don't have to account for it. What remains that is still in these pension funds, they're supposed to basically go out and search for those workers in order to be able to ensure that they know how to claim. Because as many people, when they were fired, they left. They went to Mozambique. They went to the Eastern Cape, as the comrade said. And they didn't know. People had no information. Who was holding those pension funds? How do you go out doing these things? So it's essentially the lack of information and lack of knowledge, and that has been then weaponized by the administrators and not regulated by the FSCA, so that essentially many workers are lucky if they find out where their money is. Then they can go through a process of making claims, and then they're even luckier if they can actually access these things. So the entire system is set up in order to be able, unfortunately, to make it very, very difficult for workers to get what is due to them. And that's the crisis, and that's why the amount has doubled over the last 10 years.
Yeah, and I think we sit with a challenge in trying to understand also the location of these beneficiaries and what would be the average age of said beneficiary. We'll try and understand all of that once we do return from the break. This is Harambee. Do stay with us. We are talking about the historical challenge of South Africa's economy built around cheap labor. That labor, many have been forced into retirement, some have gone into retirement, but never ever received their financial benefits. William, the average beneficiary, who exactly are they? Can they be located? What is their age? Are they still around?
The most ex-mine workers are dead. Their wives also, because the most of them were sick for silicosis. The others got TB. Even us, we left behind because we was a little bit younger at that time. We was in mine, but the most of us are dying. Me and Vavi, we was in Joburg, in Boksburg. I think it was March, April, in AGM there with UBC. They tried to organize like FSCA, the others. It was only Liberty was there. They don't want to come in front. FSCA is the umbrella of all these companies, you see, till we come back. When we come back in Joburg, they phone us that now FSCA want to talk to us. Okay, say FSA can come, because they say before there's no ex-mine workers in Cape Town. The mine workers was only in Eastern Cape, but we say there's a lot of mine workers in Cape Town because of hungry. People was staying hungry in Eastern Cape. There's no jobs. They come here. The 6th of June they was here. They bring the forms that people can fill in the forms and all that stuff. But for the people who's got the proof, like the Dompas, like me, I've got Dompas. You see?
You still have yours today?
I still got my Dompas.
And so what is the burden of proof? What is it that what counts as proof that the money, that you're due the money?
The proof, the time you take the join in Eastern Cape, then they put the stamps in Dompas, then you go home, then they put for discharge.
Yes, but how do I know that you worked for that company, that the money is due to you? How is that proven?
You see, we've got no proof for that, because there was no like a blue card or that time. So
Yeah.
there's no proof. It's only the Dompas we was using. The others now, they got something, they call it maculoscope, and the other stuff, the ones who live after 1986, because I live before.
Yeah.
You
So
see?
what you said maculoscope? What is that?
The maculoscope is something like an ID.
Okay.
It's got a picture for Teba there and your number, you see?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Goodness, there's such a lot there, Dr. McKinley, to unpack. Notwithstanding the fact that the fact that some beneficiaries have now passed, but also the burden of proof is a bit complicated, I suppose, because there weren't much records to show that these employees were in fact employees of a company. That's the one bit of it, and then the other bit is that there seems to be now this expectation that the beneficiaries of the money now need to present a very the Dompas, which is such a traumatic document for them, and having to remind us of the at an Israeli checkpoint where it gets stamped, and this is how people's lives were controlled. So I want to understand the mechanism in place at the moment to qualify, to say that I've worked at this and that company, or I've worked in this and that sector, I ought to receive the benefit. What is that burden of proof?
Yeah, so this is one of the key problems, Dr. that you just hit the nail on the head, which is that essentially what's happened is that the burden of proof has been shifted to the workers or to their dependents or to their survivors, not to the actual pension fund administrators. So this is completely wrong. So in other words, every single mine who employed any worker in the 70s and 80s has a record. They have a record of that person's name, of where they came from, of their age. There are records that are there. But because of the lack of enforcement, because the FSCA is not forcing the financial administrators to go back and force those companies to retrieve those records and to do it, what they then say is, no, as a worker, you must provide us proof. So the burden of proof then becomes, you must have the compass. You must show us the history. You must have a pay slip. Sometimes it's a pay slip. Sometimes it's something that was stamped, as Comrade Williams said. Sometimes it's a testimony of other workers. So you could go years and years, and many workers have compiled a whole range of pieces of information to try to stitch together and prove that they were employed by this particular company during this time and that they were due their benefits. But administrators then say, no, something is missing. It's sort of like the Department of Home Affairs, and you're trying to get an ID. If there's one thing that's wrong, you're rejected. So that's the problem, is that there is more pressure being put on the financial administrators and the companies, many of which, by the way, went bankrupt and many of which destroyed their records during the ending of apartheid. And then so it becomes doubly difficult for workers who 20 years later, 30 years later, their dependents, their children, their surviving spouses, whoever it might be. And it's a really, really bad situation because it means it's a potluck. If you just happen to get it right, you might get your benefits, but the vast majority fall through the cracks.
I want to stick with you quickly, Dr. McKinley, to understand the role of the phrase that you've heard a lot about today, the FSCA, the Financial Sector Conduct Authority, the regulator essentially for financial houses. What is their current role and understanding of this problem?
So we, as the UBC and as Comrade William knows, we've engaged with the FSCA and for the last several years. We've had meetings, we've had discussions, we've raised a whole range of issues, we've presented thousands and thousands of claims and forms that have been there, trying to make sure that they can process them and others. I think the FSCA is making at least some attempt now, better than the previous incumbents, to try to listen to the workers and to try to listen to these things. But that's not good enough. What is the problem with the FSCA is it has regulatory authority. It is the statutory body that is set up to regulate the financial sector, basically, and that is not being done. So what does that mean? So what we're asking the FSCA to do is to go to Liberty, to go to LIFTA, to go and look at the books, to force them to pull up all of the records, to then identify who they have paid out, who they have not, what is the plan to go and track down these beneficiaries and their dependents, and then to create a timetable to do so. They have done none of this. And as a result of that, we keep going back and forth in making these demands and workers to try to fill out all these forms and try to get them through the system. But as long as the financial regulator and the FSCA is not putting pressure and is not forcing through the law the administrators to do what they're supposed to do, they will not do it because they're making money off of this. And that's the fundamental problem, is the failure of regulation and the failure of our government to enforce our own laws and to force the financial administrators to do not only what their job is, but to do what is right.
You said there that they're making money on this. The expectation is that these monies, that could also be workers' monies, are reinvested and the profits then go to these companies, which again, is almost a double crime. Once we return from the break, I want to understand also the, the role that I suppose Parliament or the legislators play in this. Surely beyond the regulator, which is the Financial Sector Conduct Authority, there must be some sort of a conversation held with the parliamentarians and what exactly is their perspective on this crime that is yet to be at least not punished, but at least, followed up on. And so once we return from the break, we'll get into that and a lot more. Do stay with us. This is Harambe. We are talking about unpaid benefits that's due to workers. Some have gone into retirement, others lost their jobs, but nonetheless payments are due to them and they run into the billions of rands. And we're trying to understand why nothing appears to have been done, or at least why very little has been achieved in trying to get these monies to the workers. William, earlier you spoke about the politicians, the likes of Gwede Mantashe and President Cyril Ramaphosa, who were at some stage unionists. They were shop stewards within a lot of these mining houses. They must obviously be aware of this problem, including the role of Parliament and government as a whole. What is their understanding, and have they done anything about this problem?
Cyril Ramaphosa and Gwede Mantashe, they keep quiet for this problem. Like they never been there. Till Ramaphosa now is trying to kill the mine workers there by the mine Marikana. Yeah. We try to fight till we go to Parliament. The time Themba Godi for APC was helping us, but after they see Themba Godi was helping the ex-mine workers, then they try to vote him out from the Parliament. I'm not gonna talk about Zuma because we was getting the food voucher. Thabo Mbeki signed for the ex-mine workers. The time he say, the time they didn't get their money, they must get food voucher for 850. After that, they vote also him out. They put Zuma in a place. Then when Zuma comes in, then he scratch everything off. So the Parliament, they knows exactly for the money for the ex-mine workers. Even now, the time was June, the 6th of June, when we was filling the forms. We filled the forms, but most of they say they gonna check for us. Then if they see you there, they gonna tell you, no, we see your name. They phone a lot of people. They see their names, but 2-3 weeks they say, no, you got no money. But my problem, how can they see your name in the mines but you've got no money? Where's the money? Because we work in mines and we got proof of that. But me and Vavi, till today, we never get any message who say our name is there. We don't know why.
Yeah, which Dr. Delmakini, just pick up fast on that. Name is spotted, but there is no money. Verification of then what happened to the money, and if name is there, that I suppose is an indicator of, the person having worked. So what is the challenge there? If you could maybe just expand fast, as well as this idea of a food voucher. I mean, it's still shifting the responsibility away from these financial players that have received the monies but are not dispensing with the money or dispersing with the money. So how have the body politic really handled this issue?
Yeah, well, thanks, Cedric. Let's just start with that first question, the second question, which is the oversight. Parliament, the Portfolio Committee on Finance is the responsible committee that oversees the Financial Sector Conduct Authority and the financial sector itself. We have made testimony. We've given all sorts of documentation, not only us, but other organizations and worker organizations for many, many years, and asked that there be better oversight, that there be conducting investigations into the financial administrators who are holding these monies, that there be forensic investigations in relation to the cancelled funds, in which billions and billions have just disappeared off their balance sheets. None of this has been happening. And let's just be very honest and say why this is, or at least in our opinion, why this is the case, which is that there is a revolving door between the private sector and the politicians. We can see it with our president. We can see it with everyone, whatever administration has been for the last 3 or 4 administrations, where the politicians are loath to act because they sit on the boards or they have connections with many of the same people that sit on those financial authorities, or they are going to get jobs once they leave the political world within that sector as well, which we've seen many do both within the union sector as well as within the political party sector. So it's a buddy-buddy relationship. And as a result of that, we've seen the same compensation as well as worker conditions, where, for example, the labor inspectorate is basically just neutered in terms of implementing our laws. This is the fundamental crisis that we have. And as a result, the first part of what you ask, they get away with the fact they can say, look, we can see your name, but we can't see how much you owe. Well, whose responsibility is it to find out how much you're owed, when you worked? It's the financial administrator's responsibility. And yet they take massive fees from all of these pension funds, and they pay themselves and their lawyers huge amounts of bonuses while workers get nothing. It's a crime, it's absolutely unacceptable, and it's an indication of the crisis of conscience that our political class has, that they have not taken this up and they haven't done it in a very prioritized way.
Okay, just to say then on that, is the money ring fenced at least? You know that. So on the one end, I mean, there's so many areas here to understand. So you have these companies that are saying there must be some sort of a verification to determine who the money would be due to. So that's an acknowledgement that there is money, right? Then where is that money, and you know what steps are they putting in place to be able to disperse with that money? I suppose a secondary question. But have the companies that made the deposits, the mining houses and those in agriculture and others, have they pronounced themselves on this issue? Because surely it is money paid over that they've deposited.
Okay, so as you mentioned, it's a complicated scenario. So there's two ways of answering that question. The first is those companies and those mines who no longer exist. There's many that had pension funds, they've gone out of business, they went bankrupt, they closed, whatever. There's many, there's thousands of them. Those pension funds then got put, essentially what a corporation or a company did was they paid a financial administrator to administer a pension fund. So it came out of their hands, they paid into it every month, supposedly from workers' pay packages, and the pension fund then is administered by this financial administrator. If those companies then go bankrupt and then go out of business, it's then, according to the rules, the responsibility of the financial administrator, Sanlam, Liberty, whoever, MIFA, to then seek out the workers and pay them. So the company doesn't have anything to do with it anymore. Now, the existing companies, if pension fund, for example, let's say if you're working for the city of Cape Town, you have a pension fund, the city of Cape Town is paying in supposedly, and it goes, you know that the administrator is, let's say, Old Mutual for the city of Cape Town's pension fund. You retrench, you retire, something happens, and you then want to get paid out, you would then go to the administrator and say, I want to make my claim. The problem there is that the administrators now say, well, there is no one making claims. So it's a dormant fund. And then they cancel the fund. And they take that money and they push it to their own coffers, which is the one area. Then the money that does exist, that 90 billion, they just simply say, we're trying to find, it's very difficult to find these people, it's very difficult to get the necessary things, and we're trying our best, which of course they're not doing. So it's a stringing out. It's been happening for 30, 35 years in different ways, but it's fundamentally the financial administrators that are responsible who really run these pension funds and the regulatory authority to enforce the law. The companies themselves no longer have a direct relationship other than paying in the pension fund to the fund themselves, but they don't have a direct relationship of administering and tracking.
Oh, okay. William, are you hopeful that you're gonna get the monies? Do you or people like yourself will ever get the money?
I'm not sure that we're gonna get all the monies, our monies. And I know for sure, because they can't first see the people's names. They say again, there's no money on your name. And as the chairperson of the peoples, I want to take this matter to the higher level because I see there's hide and seek in this.
Yeah.
That
Well,
we mustn't get.
that's the issue I want to pick up on once I come back from the break, because I know there's been some indication of litigation, but you know, will it take an injunction from the courts to force the payment to these workers? We'll ask that once we wrap up after the break. Do stay with us. This is Harambe on Cape Town TV. Welcome back to Harambe. We are talking to the Unpaid Benefits Campaign that is largely resting on thousands of workers who have not ever had their benefits paid to them. And it seems that the money appears to be locked up somewhere in the swirl of, you know, financial accounts of these financial houses, such as the names that were mentioned but earlier in the program. And let's now look to what the status of this issue is. Dr. Del McKinley, where are we right now? There's, of course, the Financial Sector Conduct Authority as one entity. There's Parliament, the Portfolio Committee. There's the government, and whether it requires petitioning of the ministers, as well as litigation. I understand that litigation was at some stage pursued. Where are we in terms of how to force this matter even further?
Well, look, I mean, yes, litigation was pursued. In fact, William mentioned Rosemary Hunter, the former registrar. She went all the way to the Constitutional Court in terms of trying to basically turn it around. In other words, reinstated. She lost the case. Unfortunately, the Constitutional Court ruled in favor of the financial administrators and basically said they believed that what they were doing was right and that they were doing the best job. It was a very disappointing ruling, but nonetheless, we have to abide by that. As a result of that, because that was the apex court, it's been very difficult to go after individual financial administrators on a legal basis. What we have done as the UBC is we have engaged National Treasury, which of course is the body that oversees the Financial Sector Conduct Authority and is ultimately responsible for implementing our laws. They have basically turned their back on us. They have not engaged with us. We've invited them to dialogues. We've appeared in front of the parliamentary portfolio committees. It seems as though there is a wall of silence in many cases. So we are engaging some law and justice at the moment to mount another legal case that goes directly after one or two of the financial administrators to see if we can't get some joy on that front. So that's one area. The other area, of course, is that this is a very difficult terrain to organize on because, as William said, people are dying. Many beneficiaries are moving on. They're have become very, very old in terms of being able to get around. Many of their beneficiaries don't have the necessary documentation. So it's a constant battle. We have had many successes, though. I think in the time that the UBC has been in existence, we've probably benefited over 15 to 20,000 families to access their benefits. But that's a drop in the bucket when you look at the number of people. So we'll continue to advocate. We'll continue to make arguments. We'll go to court again. We'll try to mobilize, but unless the larger society comes on board and recognizes this as a societal problem that needs to be addressed and pressures our politicians, I'm afraid that we're going to be an uphill battle continuously.
Yeah, and William, how in need, are those workers who the monies are due to? It's their money. How in need would you say they are of that money?
People are very angry for their money because the others are widows. They got no more house paying. As I say, the most ex-mine workers are dying and their wives are also all dying now. That's why we want to take this matter to Constitutional Court to go to resolve all this, you see? And we can't leave this because we are standing in front of the people. People are looking at us, even the ones whose names are not appearing. They ask us. That's why if we can get help as the mine workers, we also want that help. If we can go to Parliament and go to ask straight to Guetemantashe as the mineral, something like that. He asked himself because he was there in mines.
Yeah.
And my other problem is this. I see my name on Google's. It's Chamber of Mines, it's Teba, then it's William Kasiwe. I'm the third one. My name is in there. I never put my name in there. They say I'm a chairperson of South Africa for the mine workers. I never put my name in there. Why my name is in there? Because the whole South Africa are phoning me and ask about their monies. Then they must also tell me the Chamber of Mine and Teba who put my name in their books. As now I'm appearing, you can also Google. You go to Google, you're gonna see my name in there, William Kasi.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. What does a constitutional argument look like here, Dr. McKinley? I know you said, there was a loss when this matter was litigated on previous occasion. Look, I mean, what we can accept as fact is that monies are due to these workers. What we can accept as a fact is that the monies are lying with these financial actors, and that also what we now need to determine is the quantum and where the beneficiary is. That onus now lies a lot in terms of, again, the burden of proof on the beneficiary or the recipient of that money, the intended recipient. If so, it does get litigated again, and Willem is suggesting a constitutional court action. Should perhaps the relief be that the financial houses should do a lot more to be able to dispense with this money? Because I suppose beyond just the whatever surviving beneficiary they are still left, that their families, can still benefit from this. So that money should ideally go into their estate. It belongs not to these financial houses. So is there a way then to tighten up what we then ask of the Constitutional Court?
We believe so, but we know it's going to be a difficult task, because here's the catch. The financial administrators basically say, and they will argue this, and they've argued it in their legal papers, they say, we acknowledge that there's unpaid benefits. We are trying our best to track people down. We simply can't do it because people are dead, or they're moved, or they're out of the country. They don't have the necessary documentation. So what can we do? That's basically their argument. We're doing our best. The Financial Sector Authority essentially agrees with them. What we can argue in constitutional terms, and by the way, I think as everyone knows, we wouldn't be able to go directly to the Constitutional Court. We'd have to start within the lower courts, and then we would probably be appealing to get there. But if we did, I think it would rest on two constitutional principles. That basically claimants are being denied their right to administrative justice because they've been waiting for 30 years, 20 years, they're dying, they're not getting things, and administratively the financial administrators and the conduct authority are not doing their jobs. The second basis on which is access to information. That essentially, without access to information, how can you claim your right? How can you claim your pension? If you don't know where and what it is, if you're not being given the proper information, then it's very difficult to do so. So I think on those two grounds, and I'm sure lawyers might have some others, but we could possibly make a very strong constitutional case. The challenge, as everybody knows, is that the lawyers that are willing to do this for us are very, very few and far between. But we have engaged comrades who are part of a law collective called Pension Justice, and we're beginning to work on this kind of case, and we're hoping that within the next year or so we can do that. And if that does happen, then we believe that there are some good conditions for possible success.
Lastly, you also earlier said that this rests with the broader public getting involved. Is there a way that viewers can lobby, can go to a Facebook page? How is it that the broader public can be galvanized to assist in this campaign?
Well, I think obviously for those in Cape Town, the Cape Town mine workers and the Workers' World Media Productions, I've been involved with the UBC there, the Unpaid Benefits Campaign. engagements there, particularly with the mine workers. And so William can indicate that. But nationally, there's a Facebook page of the Unpaid Benefits Campaign that people can visit. You can obviously also, if you would like to have any more information, you can also then contact us through the we are based at the Casual Workers Advice Office, which is a worker advice center based in East Rand in Johannesburg. And if you would like to do that, then please contact myself. My contact numbers can be given, and my email can be given out in relation to that. And I can do that here, or we can make it available to all our listeners. And people can then reach out. I will put you in touch with our people that are working. We will try our best to try to make sure that your claims are processed. Please understand that our resources are very limited. We're all volunteers. Nobody's getting paid for any of this. It's our free time. So we are limited in terms of our resources, but we'll do our best. And also talk to your politicians. Raise this. Write opinion pieces. Call into programs and raise this issue. These are affecting everybody, and if it doesn't affect you now, it might affect you in the future, and your dependents, and your parents, or your siblings. So take it up as an issue and make it something that the politicians and others cannot ignore.
Yeah, and so there's lots there to do. Just don't call William Kasiwe and ask him for your money. Thank you very much, certainly, for having joined us here today. This is such a minefield of an issue. It's such a big hill to climb, and let's hope that certainly workers have their rights attained at some stage. Thank you very much to Dr. Del McKinley there from ILRIG, also part of the Unpaid Benefits Campaign, as well as William Kasiwe having joined us here in studio. Until we talk next week, have a lovely day. Bye-bye.